my name is Elizabeth Robson, and I'm interested in the places that matter to people and why. We all have places that are important to us. If you were to think of somewhere right now, it might be a place where you've lived or somewhere that holds special memories or that you associate with particular activities. A place that's important to you might also be special to other members of your family, your friends, and your wider community. These collective associations, memories, and feelings are referred to as social values. All sorts of places can have social value. My research is specifically looking at the social values associated with historic places, such as this Iron Age monument, which is Duncallow Broch on the Isle of Lewis. Historic places and the stories they can tell us about our shared past have enormous potential to contribute to a more socially just and environmentally sustainable future. But in order for that potential to be realised, we need to understand what these places mean to people today. Many historic places are managed by heritage organisations, which are responsible for conserving the physical remains and maintaining the values associated with the site. This can be a complex task because, as you can see, people have different opinions about a site and therefore how it should be conserved or used. In making management decisions, heritage organisations try to understand the significance of a place. However, traditionally, they have struggled to find ways to identify and assess social values. Missing out social values or treating them as secondary to other management priorities can leave people who care about a place feeling disregarded and even result in conflict between communities or with the managing organisation. During my PhD, I completed the first comparative review of social value assessment methods to see what might be most appropriate for heritage practitioners to adopt as part of their day-to-day work. Based on my experiences assessing the social values of 7 historic places in Scotland, I developed a toolkit of guidance and advice. The social values assessments revealed many varied ways that different groups of people connect to and use these places. Capturing this diversity required a range of methods, so rather than proposing a single approach to assessment, the toolkit is flexible, with modular components that can be combined and adapted as needed according to the situation in which it is being used. Having developed the toolkit working with Historic Environment Scotland and based on Scottish examples, my Saltire exchange to Norway allowed me to see how my research findings and the toolkit might apply internationally. The research was well received, resonating with heritage practitioners' own experiences and the challenges they faced in working with the Norwegian context. Going forward, I intend to build on this experience, sharing the toolkit more widely and working with academics and professionals to help achieve more inclusive and participatory heritage management.
My name is Hayley Austin, and I study the creative industries, including comics and video games. I wanted to find out more about Sweden's female-forward creative industries, what makes them unique, and why there are so many women working in them. I traveled to Stockholm, Sweden to interview people and find out more. I also wanted to see if you could ride horses there, strictly for research purposes. In Sweden, there are comics everywhere. Libraries have entire floors of them. They're also used in museums as art installations. My interviews revealed that comics are a valued part of Swedish culture. In the UK, comics are still considered low art or just for kids. But in Sweden, almost everyone has read a comic and interacts with comics regularly. Why so many women? Comics and fanzines in Sweden have a long feminist history, as women popularized the mediums in the 1990s. Different organizations have been established that elevate the work of women. There's also government funding for people to take time off work and create art. Women are drawn to this and want to draw more, including me. I made a travelogue zine about my experience in Stockholm. I may have found a few horse comics too. Stockholm is also home to over 100 video game companies. I talked to one-woman studios and large international companies. One stole my horse girl heart. Star Stable is a horse game marketed specifically to young girls that has a sisterhood-driven message. It has been the #1 browser game for girls internationally for the last 10 years, and they use comics to attract more players. Star Stable also fosters female talent in the creative industries. They have a female CEO, and their staff is comprised of 54% women and non-binary people. Why so many ladies? It appears that more is being done at industry and government levels in Sweden to foster female talent. In Sweden, people get 18 months of paid maternity and paternity leave. Companies like Star Stable also make conscious efforts to promote women to leadership positions. When they can see other women succeed and have support, more women are drawn into the industry. What are the impacts of my research? For Sweden, I gave an outsider perspective on their strong creative industries while noting a foreign retention problem. For the UK, I pointed out changes that need to be made for a more female-forward creative industries, like a different work culture, paid maternity and paternity leave, creative arts funding, and hiring and promoting more women. But the number one takeaway is that we need more horse games in comics, right? Right? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Rosie Priest and I am a postgraduate researcher at the University of Stirling and the National Galleries of Scotland. So when cultural policy talks about young people and culture, it overwhelmingly talks about the role of collaboration. And this will, according to cultural policy, lead to positive impacts and changes within young people when they collaborate with publicly subsidised cultural organisations. But this leads to two things happening. The first is the creation of a correct form of culture, and whilst cultural policy doesn't overtly say that one form of culture is better or more important than another, by focusing only on arts institutions, they are unwittingly delegitimizing cultural practices outside of that. So when we think about culture, we often think about traditional arts, things like visual art, theatre, dance and music, but culture is so much bigger than that. You can have skateboarding culture, graffiti culture, gardening culture, even things like underground rave culture. And of course, what cultural policy is really talking about is the traditional arts aspect of culture. The second thing that happens when cultural policy discusses collaborating with arts institutions in order to have positive impacts on young people is creating the idea that young people need to change and they need to do so through these institutions. The problematization of young people, the fear and the moral panic surrounding teenagers is furthered by the idea that it is teenagers who need to change. So my work, which will kick off in September, is going to explore what happens when we take cultural organisations out of the equation altogether. And I will be working with an organisation in Malmö, Sweden called Culture Crew, and they focus on supporting young people to create their own cultural events, projects and programmes, and their move towards young person-led projects is a significant shift from how things are done in the UK. It signifies a massive change in power, and it allows us to see what culture actually means to young people and what is the culture they themselves want to generate. And this, of course, could inform the work of cultural policymakers, those working in cultural organisations, as well as young people in the UK wanting to develop their own projects. My work will be supported by Malmö University, who have a flourishing faculty of culture and society, and the faculty is a creative and energetic place. I will be working closely with the acclaimed research group Medea at the university to consider ways of sharing my learning in exciting and new accessible ways, things like zines, podcasts, and even exhibitions. And I will also be presenting my research at Malmö University throughout my journey. I am very excited to start exploring youth-led projects and thinking about how we can share academic learning in new and accessible ways.